Hello, you're listening to Do Yourself A Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. My name's Tim Sisney from Make Work Work Better, and each episode I'll be talking to my guests about their epiphanies, their inspirations, and the magic of their workflow. And I'm very happy to be joined today by Dan White. Hello, Dan.
Hi Tim, thanks for inviting me.
Not at all. So welcome to Do Yourself A Favour. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure, I'm Dan White. I'm originally a market research analyst and inventor, as in I helped develop new market research solutions. And then I spent 8 years as a CMO, and then the last 2 years I've spent collecting my thoughts and notes from what I learned over the previous 28 years, and I've been doing a lot of consultancy and writing and drawing and all sorts of fun stuff.
Excellent. And so you had a book come out 2 years ago?
Actually, it was only about a year ago. Yeah.
Was it really? Okay.
Yeah, it was last September actually, so less than a year. Yeah, that was my first book. That was about marketing. It was called the Smart Marketing Book. That was kind of everything I'd learned over the last, about the specialism that I was in.
Okay. And I think it's fair to say that your style is very visual.
Yes. I mean for me, I'm a very visual person. Images have always come first. The backstory is literally, I've still got a few left, but I had a pile of all my notebooks. They're like, the kind of thing, an A5 notebook, just a classic pad that I'd filled with things I'd learned. And I tend to use scribbles, diagrams, frameworks if I can think of them, or if they've been given to me, to try and remember the stuff I've learned. And so that was my resource. That was my material I used to try and create these two books. So I kind of did them in parallel, to be honest. That's why they've come out in quite quick succession, because they're like one project. There's, the idea is like, in a career to succeed, you need your technical skills. In my case, ended up being marketing. But you also need your soft skills, which is my second book, the soft skills book. So they kind of go together, as in, if you can combine the two in your career, you're going to succeed. You're likely to succeed. That's the thinking anyway.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So we'll dive straight into it. Could you tell me about something you wish you'd known sooner?
That's actually very easy. Very, very easy, because I remember the moment it happened, and I remember thinking back and thinking at the time, I really wish I'd learned this skill about 10 or even 15 years earlier, possibly more. It was, I think, as you know, I worked for Kantar for many years, and one of the good things about Kantar was that there used to be healthy training budgets. So actually there was a fantastic training course, a whole week's training course for senior-ish people, It's actually run by a company called Exeter. They're still going strong now. I think they're a fantastic company. I thought I'd give them a name drop. It was all actually about how to be partly a better leader, but in particular, how to be a better client manager. How to really help clients and actually genuinely try to understand their business issues and the behaviors you need to be able to do that. And I just remember, and I must have been in my mid-30s, early 30s, something like that. And it was very interactive. And we did these exercises about listening skills, active listening. And I thought, I'd never really heard of the concept, or vaguely heard of the concept before. But then having practiced it and seen what it felt like, and this I need to make a big note of, a big scribble, if you like. And I think it kind of transformed my career, to be honest. Just the value you get, and the person you're talking to, the value they get from listening properly, is just gold dust, absolute gold dust. So I wish I'd known that at the start.
Yeah, and so what do you think? What do you think you missed before?
I missed a lot. I talk too much. It's just a fact. And I think if you're someone who likes to pontificate and show off a bit and tell people stuff, like I have a tendency to, you miss out on everything. Or you don't. Well, it's boring because you know about you. what you think. So you're not learning anything if you don't listen to other people. And if you are good at active listening, you realize that everyone is interesting. Everyone is often more humorous or more, they always have a story to tell or an opinion, and that's usually shaped by something. And by listening, you understand so much. You understand, like, for example, what really the person cares about. And for example, if you're any kind of role where you need to, like if you're managing someone or if you're trying to sell something to someone, just understanding properly what they care about is it's the starting point for how to actually help them or respond to them or offer them something that's valuable. So as much as anything, it's understanding what they need and care about. But not just that, but also the act of listening means you're almost certainly going to build a relationship with them. Because you're showing you're interested, you're letting them talk. People do like to talk about what they care about. This is a skill that's not just valuable in work, in kind of work context, but also at home with, relationships with partners and children. Just listen. And anyway, you can tell I'm a bit of a evangelist. In fact, in my book, the second book, the Soft Skills book, the one chapter I referred back to more than any other by far was an early chapter about listening skills. So again, it reinforced this idea that it's a fundamental that you use in so many different ways. Yeah.
I did a version of the training I think you're referring to, and I remember very clearly getting home after what were 3 quite full-on days. It was a fairly sort of draining few days, quite a lot of stuff to take in and so on. I remember getting home being quite tired, and then at the end of the weekend, sort of going into Monday morning, my wife just saying to me, "There's something different. What's different?" And I said, I don't know. Then a couple of days later, she said, "I think I've worked it out." She said, "I think you're actually listening to me."
Well, it's true. I mean, we do often, that phrase, it's like often a conversation is just waiting until the other one stops so you can start talking again. I mean, that's some conversations are like that, but you get a much more reward if you actually listen. It's actually fun as well. Also, there are other benefits as well. If you actively listen, really listen and probe and ask questions, you don't actually even need to take notes. You always remember the important things. It just goes in. It's because it's become important to you and the person you were talking to. So, yeah, it's anyway. That's that's the advice I give if I'm ever coaching or whatever to young people just entering the workforce or early in their careers. Is just start on that. Start on your listening skills. See if they're any good, and try to improve them, and go from there.
And I suppose the important thing to remember about it is that it is a skill. It is something you can learn.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a technique. There's a framework. I mean, I was trying to think how to describe this in the simplest possible terms, and I think it's something about fundamentally, it's just ask questions rather than tell people what you think. That's kind of it. But actually, there is a process, and if you follow the process, I mean, the key thing is paying attention and making sure you're paying attention to someone. Look them in the eye, and most important thing is don't talk very much. Do much more asking than saying. That is actually the secret. But also there are skills, aren't there? The probe questions, the questions that allow people to open up and say what they think. They're basically just open questions, really. There's no rocket. It's not super advanced or anything. But then there's the magic of the pause, and I never realised how important this is. And the pause is important, especially when you're talking with someone who is a little bit reserved. The pause is crucial. Don't fill the silence. Leave the pause. I know we're doing it now because it's inevitable. We both have to pause. Yeah,
it's great. It's great podcasting.
No, but the pause is like you ask a question and you just wait, and it feels like far too long, and the temptation is to fill it. But if you don't, suddenly you'll get a kind of wow, and you're there. You go, tell me more, and it all comes flooding out because usually people just need and want an opportunity to say what's really on their mind, and then that pause can can help them. And then after that, it's more things like, once you've heard what you've listened, play it back. Play it back to them, and if you get it right, great. If you get it wrong, they can clarify. So and they know you've listened, and you also know that you know each other. You understood it completely because they've corrected you. If there's something you can come in at the very end, if you're trying to be a helpful listener, you might make a suggestion or two, but often you don't need to, because it's helped the person think it through themselves.
That's something that I think is really interesting about what you're doing with this most recent book, because a lot of the sort of soft skills idea, so things like listening or understanding or having empathy or caring or being able to give feedback or being able to be being organized, or all of those things, a lot of the time they're things that people kind of feel are innate. It's just, that's part of my personality, and it's not. And the idea that you could learn all of those things, and that they're actually often quite simple frameworks that enable you, that give predictable results.
Yeah, proven kind of processes, if you like, that you can just learn. And and it's one of these things. Actually, there is, like I said, just described it. The process, 5 Ps or whatever. But when you first start using it, you feel a bit odd, because you're kind of looking down and going, oh, what do I do next? Oh, I pause. It feels a bit phony. But actually, after a while, it becomes second nature, because you've done it many times and you like doing it. You want to do it because it's helpful and develop a relationship, and you learn more, and it's great. So a lot of these things start off as a little bit, after that bit of the learning curve, then you're on a roll. I find out. No, actually, I mean, the other framework I think is the most important. The two that I always talk about as being my favourites. One is obviously listening, but the other one is almost the natural follow-on from listening, which is the coaching framework. It's called the GROW framework. I'm sure you've come across that one, where effectively you're using your listening skills to help someone solve their own problem, because you're their coach, or it doesn't matter. Anyone can use it. The beautiful thing about it is you don't need to be an expert in whatever they're doing at all. In fact, you don't need to know anything about it. You can coach. I've coached my children in areas of their, they've done PhDs in things I know nothing about, but you can help them figure out what they need. And the way, just very quickly, the way it works is, I mean, it's so simple. It's genius. It's you ask the person what their goal is. Goal. What's your goal? Describe your goal. What is it you need to achieve? That's usually quite straightforward. Then the R is just the reality. Well, okay, what's the current reality? And that helps crystallize for the person the gap, the difference between where they are. That just helps frame the problem, really, doesn't it? And then the O is options. So, okay, you've told me what you want to achieve. You've told me where you are now. What options have you got to try and get there? And that's pure listening then. It's like, okay, tell me more. Why is that? Could you get around that? What do you think of that solution? What other solutions can you think of? What is that? It's just asking questions. And then the easy one at the end, the beautiful thing is, after you've gone through that process, you ask the W, which is simply, well, what will you do? It's meant to help them decide their course of action. Then you want to go, well, it's obvious, isn't it? And you go, yes, because of what you told me, but you didn't know it was obvious until you went through that very simple process. I think that is absolute genius, the best ever business, as any kind of, manager or leader or mentor or even just helpful colleague. So, yeah.
And I think also when you become a manager, particularly, especially because a lot of the time people become managers because they're good at something else.
Yeah, happens a lot.
And so there's a kind of process through which you have to kind of find your feet, and there's a real temptation to tell people what you know, particularly if they ask.
Yeah.
So someone comes to you and says, what should I do about this thing? Then you kind of, well, I have an opinion, and it's natural to want to share it, especially when somebody asks. Similar to what you talk about with the Grow framework, my favourite question to ask Milo reports when I had them was, I'm not sure, what do you think? Which
I do something similar, which is, I have a vague idea, but what do you think? Very similar, but obviously I'm a bit more eccentric than you. Yours is a better question. Yeah, yeah, but I think you're right. That idea of, well, you're helping them, getting them to think. It's helpful to them. It'll actually help them be. Yeah, it'll help them learn, and it'll help them faster. Always. Yeah.
and over time, I found that with that, they'll come to me with a question, and then they would almost say, "But you're going to ask me what I think, so I think this."
And then you go, you're right.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then after a little while, they stop coming to you with the question, and they just come to you telling you what they've just
What they're
updated
going
with what
to
they've
do.
done.
Yeah, give you the opportunity to build on it if I know. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing when that happens.
So the next question, this started as a book when I first started the podcast, asking people about books, but it's kind
Yeah.
of broadened out to become books or concepts or similar. But what was something that was a real turning point for you, and like a book or a concept that changed the way that you looked at things and understood things?
Yeah, okay. I have got. Am I allowed a one book and one concept
Of
quickly?
course, yeah, of course.
Well, the concept is it's basically a growth mindset. The idea of what a growth mindset is and how valuable it is. That's quite important. I mean, I've always been an actually curious kind of person, but I hadn't sort of realised that having a mindset that assumes that you can learn anything if you set your mind to it, how valuable that would be in my career. Just because it turns out to be true. And I also, it's not just for you to get on, it also helps you be a much better manager, because if you effectively believe that the people who are working with you, you believe in their potential. Yeah. I mean, I think, so, yes, some people have more potential to do certain things than other certain things, of course, but everyone has potential, and everyone has potential to be really, really good at probably more than one thing, probably lots and lots of different things. And I think that concept is both helpful for yourself and for you as a manager. So that's it. That concept, brilliant, and essential. And yeah, again, if you want to be a good leader and a good manager, it's useful to have that in mind. But the book, it's got to be this one. It's David McCandless. Yeah.
Information is beautiful.
Yeah. It's apparently Edward Tufte did something similar beforehand, but that kind of passed me by. This is the one that I noticed. And sorry, but just yeah, look at that.
Got it signed, nice.
It's signed, which is just a wonderful thing. Yeah, just that the idea that of understanding the value of making ideas simple and beautiful is just a big idea for me. Simple and beautiful, so that it becomes famous, so that people understand it, so that people can use it, so that people can learn from it, and they can help teach other people with it. Hence, you mentioned earlier, I'm very into visuals. That actually inspired me to dust off all the scribbles when I had an opportunity to do so, and turn them into something that I can share. So both in the books and also on the website. I've got a website, and that's free because I just like the idea of people going, "Oh, that's a nice way of thinking about it." And so yeah, so that I would say is a big inspiration. Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to do some training with David McCandless.
I'm jealous.
Probably, yeah, about 9 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And what I was struck by most during his presentation, and he was taking us through the thinking behind some of his more famous visualizations. And it struck me that he appears to be driven by a kind of righteous rage at the way that media and politics and politicians and the world at large mispresents information or use information in a way which is very, very difficult to contextualize.
Right. Yes.
So the $1 billion gram, which was his first really famous visualization, came from this idea of him watching the news and realizing that people are using numbers like $23 billion.
Yeah.
And in some news stories, $23 billion seems like a lot, and in some news stories, $23 billion doesn't seem like a lot. And so he was trying to find a way to put into context for people what does $23 billion actually mean in the context of the world.
Yeah. Okay. So okay.
That's right. Yeah, and then he started. There's another one he did that was around bad news stories, and how you would have peaks and troughs in particular sort of scare stories in the media at different times of year, and it would usually tie to particular parts of the news cycle, and it was but he would spot really, really interesting patterns once he visualized the data. So such as even 10 or 15 years after the Columbine school shootings, there would still be a spate of news reports about violent video games.
Yeah.
Around about the anniversary of that.
Really?
So that had a cultural effect on the way that the news was reported for many, many years afterwards. And so a lot of it was driven by this kind of sense of wanting to really make information accessible and clear to people so they could make their own decisions about the world around them.
Yes, because it's been presented in a way that they can understand. I mean, I must be a nightmare, actually, I think. Maybe me think of something. Last night, we were watching one of the, the new cricket series in the UK. Mm-hmm. The sort of UK equivalent of the IPL, I guess, or some similar to that kind of thing. It's called the 100.
So the 100, yeah.
It's called the 100, yeah. It's 100 balls rather than 120 or whatever, which is 2020, but it's only getting shorter. One day we're going to have like a game of cricket with 10 balls or something, or 11 balls, one per person. I don't know. Doesn't matter. No, I sound like an old funny did it. I'm not. I actually really enjoyed it. It's a great thing. But I was sitting there when me and my wife were watching, and I was going, that's just so annoying. It's like, at one point you're using the two colours to represent the two teams, and then you're using the same two colours to represent the number of balls and versus the number of runs for the same team. How confusing is that? And I keep, because I mean, it looks cool, but it's very, in my opinion, it's really quite bad visualization because they're making amateur errors, and you see a lot of amateur errors all over the place, as in things that are just detracting from the point. So many visualizations that just, there are distractions or things that are confusing, or things that are just wrong and no one spotted it because they don't really understand it. They only just get a vague sense of what they're looking at, which I find a bit frustrating, because if you don't really understand it, how can you really use it properly, like you said? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't, if you don't understand the underlying story behind the data and how the data works, then visualizing it clearly is very difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of why I've quite enjoyed doing, I've done some work with WARC, the World Advertising Research Centre, doing some animations, etc. with them. And it's quite fun because it's like, because I'm a marketer fundamentally, yeah. So I understand marketing. My first book was about marketing, and it's kind of like I can work with people to understand the concept and visualize it. But sometimes they're quite sophisticated concepts, so I kind of feel a bit privileged to be able to do the bridging. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. I become I'm more interested in actually finding the best marketing ideas rather than necessarily coming up with them and then helping that. Like I won't bore your audience with too much marketing stuff, but there's something called the Hankins hexagon, which is a genius idea for looking at the path to sales and stuff like that. But it just needed to be brought alive in the way it was shown. So that's kind of where
anyway. I very much understand and appreciate the idea that once you start digging into a certain kind of discipline, seeing bad examples of it in real life can become incredibly frustrating.
Excessive, yeah.
Yeah. So after I started to become involved in process improvement, and I did my lean qualifications, and I started to think about that, queuing anywhere would be just. It became, queuing is bad enough as it is, but when you're dissecting the queuing process and just getting cross at things that they could be doing to make it better, trying to make a cup of coffee in an office kitchen, I would just be there going, well, if we moved that to there, then this whole thing would be easier. Just rearranging things in people's houses.
So just maybe think something else. Have you seen the film about the history of McDonald's? I'm trying to remember what it's called.
The Founder, is it? With Michael Keaton?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, with the guy who was Batman once, right?
That's right. Michael Keaton, yes.
I think that's the way
He was Beetlejuice as well.
Oh, he was. Oh, he's good. Yeah, and he was in that weird film that was like all in one take as well.
Yeah, Birdman.
But
Yeah.
so you said we go for tangents. You just cut all that bit out. Yeah, the point is that film has a wonderful bit at the beginning. If you haven't near the beginning, where he was figuring out on a base, he used a baseball tarmac, area, and a kind of spray can, and said, "Well, yeah, but hang on, if we do this," and they literally did arrows and lines to make the kitchen totally efficient. It's very, yeah, you'd love that. You should have.
I'll put it on the wish list.
I'm sure it's on YouTube. Just that bit. Just look at that bit. Well, actually, it's quite a good film, by the way. It's not bad. So where are we?
So we're moving into the recommendations and workflow and nerdery stuff now, which
okay,
is,
yeah, cool.
which is one of my which I always find extremely insightful about people. So, can you tell us about a tool which is not your phone or your laptop, but could be software on your phone or laptop, but you're not allowed to just say your phone or your laptop.
Okay.
But a tool that you use every day and would not be without.
Well, I can cheat, obviously, because you just ruled out phone and laptop. So I can go for the old watch.
Okay, go on.
And it's a bit. Well, yes, it is a cheat because in fact it's an extension of your phone. We know that, and it does some of the things, a subset of the things, really. Let's be honest. But it's there. Look, the thing is, this is really important, right? Because I was there in 1970 something or other, 7, I suppose, 8. No, it must have been a bit later because after Star Wars came out, right? Therefore, after 7, you probably know better than me, 77. So, and it was those digital watches where you press the button and then the red lights, I think what they called LED lights came up to tell you the time. And I thought this was sci-fi beyond my wildest dreams. Even if the battery went after about 3 months, I thought, and then later I got a calculator watch. I mean, it blew my mind. It had little buttons on it, right? And not only could I do sums here, that no one else could do, but I could also play a game, where the numbers would, you're way too young to remember this game, but they'd scroll, they kind of build across the screen. And you had to quickly tap the right one in time to make them disappear. It's basically a kind of Tetris type thing before it fills up.
Okay.
Anyway, and I thought, and then on Star Trek, I go off a tangent now, but the point is, I never thought my wildest dreams that you'd have something this sophisticated on your wrist. So I had to buy it on day one. I don't buy it, I'm a bit of a tech. I'm interested in tech, but this one blew my mind, and I do use this a lot. So that's one. But I've got loads of other things to show you. There's this one. You go.
That's a two. Yeah. So for those of you who are not actually looking at Dad right now, which is all of you.
You know what? I should have. My first question at the beginning should have been: is this a video podcast? Or I will describe the thing I'm holding. It's got bristles at the end, and it looks exactly like a normal toothbrush because that's what it is. So that was kind of my joke answer, if you like, Tim. But the serious answer, probably the serious answer, is basically pencils. So the two things I'm showing just to Tim are a traditional kind of propelling type pencil thing from Pentel, 0.7, 0.5 snaps, and an Apple Pencil, which has been my saviour over the last sort of 18 months when I've been doing more and more drawing and illustrating and things like that. So pencils, yes, because I can't, every day I need to capture what I'm thinking or doing, and that's the way I've always done it, scribbling. Mm-hmm. So therefore it's very low tech, but it is a pretty, certainly the graphite version anyway, but it's essential for me.
So in your illustration workflow, just talk us through that. Do you work on paper first and then transfer it digitally?
Yeah. Well, until recently I did. I literally used pencil and rubber and paper and rubbed it out until it looked right and hoped the rubbings out weren't too strong. Otherwise it would take me even longer. Then scanned it in via, printer scanner, then used Photoshop to tidy them up, and make them, look a little bit better and add in the colour, so it's cell shaded effectively. Outline in black, but that was taking me absolutely ages. So each individual thing would take forever. But my daughter persuaded. She's a designer. She persuaded me to use an iPad and an Apple Pencil. And once I got used to it, oh, it's a godsend. It's just brilliant. It's so much faster. Get it wrong, you just press undo. You know, it's obviously. I should have thought that before, really. But yeah, so that's my world, or at least a chunk of it.
How does the Apple Watch fit into your workflow? What do you make? Is it notifications, or do you have any particular things that you use it for?
So, I mean, one of the most important things is each morning, that's a stupid little thing, but each morning I look at all the meetings I've got and I set an alarm for 5 minutes before. Yeah, simple as that. Just so I cannot miss meetings, because I used to kind of just be so absorbed in something that I lose track of time. You know what it's like, especially during lockdown and you're in one place a lot. So I use that a lot. I use Crick Buzz, which tells me when a wicket has fallen in the cricket, which is obviously quite important. Today, a wicket or a six or whatever, things like that. I use in the kitchen, you know, for counting down the time on the different. Well, because you can have multiple alarms, you can time different things rather than you know, for different elements of the thing you're preparing. Because I tend to cook most days. Oh, what else do I use it for? I've even been the nerd who uses it to answer their phone occasionally. But that is a bit embarrassing, so I tend to avoid that. Especially because I'm kind of an old person, so I think, I probably have to hold it close to my mouth. And look. I use it for a surprisingly large number of things. I didn't think I would, but I actually do.
I took the one thing that has changed with the way that I use my wearable tech during lockdown is that I now use it to track the amount of water I'm drinking.
So say again, you track what?
Track the amount of water I'm drinking, my hydration.
Yeah.
Because I was finding I was getting I used to get migraines really badly. Haven't got them for a while, and then during lockdown started to get them quite a lot. And I think it was a combination of screen time and because I wasn't moving about around an office, you know, and walking past the tap and getting a drink of water. I wasn't drinking as much water, so having like a reminder to say don't forget to drink some water and being able to track actually have I had enough water across the course of a day has just been it's just a good reminder, and it has actually really helped with just not getting the headaches.
Related to that, actually, and I don't even know how it works and whether it works that way. You probably know better than me, but the Breathe app, yeah, but I don't know if it detect your heart rate or something, and if the heart rate's going high, it goes, you probably need to breathe now. But I do find it quite regularly says, take a breath. Do you know? I'm just curious.
I think it does. It does track your heart rate. There's a fantastic story actually, which is kind of cricket related, of Jonathan Agnew when he was commentating on the final 2 overs of the Cricket World Cup.
Oh yeah.
And apparently his watch was just telling him that he needed to breathe like with every ball because his heart rate was kind of.
Well, he was excited. I remember it quite well. Yeah.
He had to take his watch off apparently because it was distracting him by just telling him that he needed to sit down and breathe.
Well, I found that quite helpful because I get quite stressed, and therefore something that just reminds me, it may be just a moment now to just, take a moment out. I find that extremely helpful. Yeah.
So what's your latest shiny thing? What was the last thing you bought or acquired which you're like, oh, that's really clever, and I find that really useful?
Well, that's the kind of nerdy question I like. I actually have a list of all the shiny
of course
I've ever bought. Well, not ever, including an outdoor pool table. I literally woke up one day because I've always wanted to play pool, but I've never really had a house. I've never had a house big enough, to accommodate the queues and all that stuff. And I suddenly thought, I wonder if there's such thing as an outdoor pool table. And of course there is. You go on Google and you find that someone in Britain makes one. So that was that's one of my favourite purchases ever. It's basically just a pool table where they've done special stuff to really protect the wood. So it's it's very protected, and the base is waterproof, so the water just rolls off it like a duck's back sort of thing. Genius. Anyway, no, but I have my favourite things. One is there is a tool, a multi-tool, right? Mm-hmm. It's a good example of form and function because it's one of these things that can unscrew and undo almost anything, but it looks like a beautiful Christmas decoration, like a snowflake.
Like a snowflake, yeah, I see. So what's that got on it? It's got like little sort of Allen key type things and spikes.
It's got Allen keys. It's got different types of screwdriver. It's got I'm not sure what that one is. That's a bottle opener, obviously, because everything has a bottle opener in it, etc. It's got like a mini chisel even in
Okay.
that bit. So I just thought that was a beautiful thing. But by the way, it's too heavy to hang on a Christmas tree. But
I was going to ask. Yeah.
yeah,
I was just imagining this really, really hardcore Christmas tree just covered in
yeah,
like
you need a
spanners and
mattress
crowbars.
to go with it. What other things? I like. Well, it's a mundane clock that I've had this for nearly 30 years. It wasn't cheap at the time. I thought it was, I think, some sort of reward for some sort of achievement, like a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember exactly what it was. I just love the design. It's the kind of, it's like a Swiss. What's the style?
Mm-hmm.
Railway style.
Yeah. It's the Swiss railway clock that I think the icon for the Apple clock app
Yeah, I think it probably
is
is.
styled on.
Just
Yeah.
like they stole the sort of the Braun calculator, yeah, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Anyway, and the hands have and the hour marks have got a tiny amount of tritium in them, which means you can see them in the dark without having to do anything for decades. It is actually starting to fade now. They did promise 25 years or something, and it was about right. So I might need a new one, but anyway. So that is a lovely thing. And the third item I brought for you, this is like Room 101. This is crazy. It's just a very simple practical thing. I'm really into cooking. It's called the Any Sharp knife sharpener.
Okay.
And it's just a perfect piece of design. And it suctions on your table, so it's safe when you're moving your knife across it really well.
Mm-hmm.
And it just works. It just works really well. And it's only about £7 or something. So there you go. I brought you several gadgety things that I love.
And that's a nice mixture of extremely practical, utilitarian, and
Completely bonkers.
and yeah, and outside pool tables is not something that I've really thought about before, but obviously they exist. Like,
Yeah, but you got to think outside the dining
house.
room. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Outside the billiard room.
Outside the yeah. Well, no, if you had a billiard room, you wouldn't need to think outside it, would you? But just saying.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
I've always thought if I ever really, really make it, kind of thing, I will have a house big enough for a full size snooker table. But that requires an enormous room when you think about it. So it may never happen. I've got over the fact it may never happen. I'm fine with it. I'm happy to go outdoors.
Yeah, you could. I mean, you could get a normal house. If you knocked through on all the walls, you could probably make it work.
Yeah, but I don't know. I have a partner. I have a wife. So you've got to factor that in to the consideration of whether that would be a sensible thing to do. Let's say.
Okay. I remember you've made me think about. We used to have a small pool table type thing that would fit on the dining room at my grandma and granddad's house, and obviously because of it was an old pub, this house, and so it was a bit higgledy-piggledy, and some of the corners were a bit short and so on. So my grandpa made like tiny cues for if you're in the corner and you couldn't get your elbow up. Yeah, and to this day, you can really tell when we watch my brother play pool that he has like a certain thing in his action which comes from having learnt to play pool in like a really, really tiny space. I think it's really fascinating when you can see in like professional sports people or actually in any kind of field, I guess, the tics that people develop that have come as a result of the constraints where they've learnt. I think it might be Bounce by Matthew Syed, where he talks about a table tennis player who was known for having this really odd game because he played really close up to the table as opposed to a lot of people who stand back, and that's just because the garage he used to practice in wasn't very big and he didn't have the space.
Do it. I know. Yeah. Well, garages are often used for this kind of thing, so you have to be quite inventive. Yeah.
Nice. Excellent, Dan. So we're on the home straight now. We're clattering towards the end, and I would like you to complete the sentence. Do yourself a favour and. Yeah,
I guess this is get a bit serious now actually, but I thought, my gut feeling is this is how I wanted to answer this one, which is do yourself a favour and forgive yourself. Yeah, makes sense. Forgive
It
yourself.
does.
I was thinking it could be sympathetic to yourself. That would be a very similar alternative, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like someone said to me this once, and it struck me so powerfully, and it's been helpful. Which was that some people, and I'm one of them, will often say things to them about themselves or to themselves, kind of in their head, or even out loud, actually. But
Mm-hmm.
say to themselves things that are really quite not very nice, really nasty things you wouldn't dream of saying to anyone else because it would be too unfair or rude or
Mm-hmm.
inconsiderate or unsympathetic. But for some reason, we sometimes do that to ourselves, or some people do.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak from people I've talked to myself, and it's like, that's really quite. I find that quite damaging because it's like, well, you have to live with yourself, and if you're going to be saying things like that to yourself, I mean, if it was your flatmate, you'd leave the flat.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't leave your own head. So anyway, I thought, and I did put that in to the book early on. I wasn't sure whether, I'm not an expert in this area, but I thought I wanted to put something in about mindfulness, not about mindfulness, because I think that's a very good way of tackling it, but more just generally the importance of looking after your mental health and being aware of
Mm-hmm.
the need for it. So I did put a chapter in the book, and it's really nice because the people I've sent it to for pre-read have been said that they appreciated that. It came across nicely, which I'm really I'm more proud about that than the rest of the book in a way, because I'm a big believer that things like this should be discussed a little bit more, and I'm really happy that seems to be happening more and more in society, that people talk about this challenge and take it seriously, and the stigma is going away. So yeah, so that's what I would say.
And I suppose we come full circle a little bit, because if you're thinking about think about something like mindfulness, for example, as a way of quietening your brain and enabling you to, I guess, recognize and put to one side those negative thoughts that you can have.
Yeah.
It's also a really, really helpful tool for listening, because if you can remain in the moment while you're having a conversation with someone and not get distracted by what am I having for tea tonight, or something they've said reminding you of something you saw on telly, then it's a really helpful. Those two skills, I think, are quite closely linked.
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before, but I'm sure you're right. In fact, I like to come up with my frameworks with a nice acronym or two.
Mm-hmm.
I must admit, I'm very proud of my acronym for helping think about mindfulness. Just because the acronym is OASIS, and
Nice. Yeah.
Oasis, calming moment or place, or conjures up the idea of your safe place and all those kind of concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it works quite well. So that's one of my favourites in the book, actually.
Okay, I have interest just about how much of when you came up with it did you go, oh, can I make this spell Oasis? Or did you suddenly go, oh, that could spell Oasis?
Yeah, so there's one letter in one acronym that is forced, but generally my rule of thumb is it has to work well. The words have to mean exactly what they're supposed to mean, but I will play around and keep thinking about and get the source out and just hope something emerges. And obviously, if one emerges that looks promising, you try and make it work,
Mm-hmm.
But this one, sometimes they fall out, and this one fell out almost perfect. Well, I think really, really well. I'm really happy with it.
Nice. So where can people find you, Dan?
I think the best place to find me is my website. It's quite an easy one. It's www.smartmarketing.me. It's a bit odd. It's got no .com or anything like that, or .uk. So it's just smartmarketing.me. But I'm very happy for people if they want to get in touch directly through LinkedIn, and obviously on the website there's a contact page, and click through. My LinkedIn handle is linked from there. But I'm down on LinkedIn as Dan White, author of the Smart Marketing book. I may change that to author of the Soft Skills book, depending on how sales are going of the books, but we'll see. So, and I'm happy I really enjoy getting to know new people and networking, and it's relevant to me. So if people do want to get in touch, I'd love it. So.
And the book's available nowish?
Nowish, yes, available. It will have launched on the 29th of July, so it's available now. And yes, the best place to get that is if you're in most countries, Amazon is absolutely fine. The US Amazon is later, but all the other countries, for some reason, are already available ahead of US. Or bookdepository.com, which is very good for more, countries that don't have, where Amazon doesn't have a good postal service kind of thing, or local presence. Those are the best two.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dan.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. It's been a lot of fun. And we'll speak to you all again soon.
Great. Thanks.
You've been listening to Do Yourself A Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. Brought to you by Make Work Work Better. My name's Tim Sisney from Make Work Work Better. Our theme tune is by the Titanics. Talk to you again soon.